Welcome inside the parlor. It's Family Day long weekend here in Canada. We're all members of the family, play on their devices by themselves, ignoring each other completely. But we kicked off the long weekend in style on Friday. Takeaway Chinese, spectacular blue gin and tonics, movie on the TV, early to bed because it was early to rise for me on Saturday. And look who was in the house, none other than Tom Hanks, 40-year Aston Villa fan, never been to Villa Park. I wonder what that feels like. Here he's telling Christian Purslow in his Forrest Gump voice, "Stay away from football decisions, Jenny." 3 losses now in a row for Aston Villa. Back-to-back 2-4 scorelines at Villa Park. Same scoring pattern as the Leicester game, so their losing games from winning position stat has taken a beating again, plus some other irritating little habits are starting to creep back into the squad. Let's review Aston Villa 2, Arsenal 4. Our special correspondents from Villa Park for the Arsenal match, the father and son duo from the land that gave us Ollie Watkins, beautiful Devon, Tom and Alfie Hutton, no relation to Alan apparently, but doesn't Tom bear a striking resemblance to Canadian rock icon Bryan Adams? Don't you think? Sean Dyche would say, "That's a looky-likey." You know, they say sometimes that the anticipation and the build-up is better than the event, so let's take you through the build-up with Team Huts on their way to the match.
So what do we think today then, Al? What's the score going to be? Huh?
Hey Pete, I know you're a big fan of Aston Villa, yeah? So come here soon from Canada. Cheers. Looking forward to see you. Looking forward to having you here. Beautiful.
Yeah, all right, Pete.
Hi Pete.
From DC.
North America.
My neighbours to the north.
There you go, Pete. That one's coming from all the way from Villa Park to Canada.
Amazing, Tom.
Of the Villa.
Amazing. Thank you.
They've got to come and win this game, realistically, Arsenal, but
Yeah, pressure's on them, man.
These guys really know what they're doing. What a great job, Team Hut. I'm going to show more of your footage a little bit later on. After the game, I went straight back to bed. I mean, it's 6:30 in the morning, and I think because I got all these great messages and videos from people going to Villa Park, I had all these visiting Villa Park dreams. So let's update you on Pete and Rob's Villa Park pilgrimage. Because of generous support by viewers like you and your super thanks, Pete and Rob's Villa Park pilgrimage is shockingly we're almost at cruising altitude now. For that, I simply cannot thank you enough. And now Rob and I have a decision to make. We got to bleep or get off the pot at some point and commit to either coming this April. Otherwise, it's going to have to be August and the beginning of next season. But once again, your support of this program just means an awful lot to us. More of Team Hut's spectacular footage, this time from inside Villa Park as the players come out and as we present the Holy Trinity show, the 3 key issues or moments that defined Aston Villa 2, Arsenal 4, starting with the key statistics, which were once again heavily in favor of the opponent. Second game in a row, frankly, that Villa was outpossessed badly, outshot, out-XG, didn't create any big chances, but for the second straight game, they actually had the better, oddly, of successful dribbles. But everything else went Arsenal's way thanks to a very dominant second half. Possession 2-1, basically. Shots 3-1. I guess you could argue Aston Villa is more efficient with the shots they take, but they did have more successful dribbles than their opponents. Let's hear it for small victories. Key issue, the 1-1 goal. Here you have Ollie Watkins scoring for the 4th game in a row, and early again, 5 minutes in. Great ball from his best mate and the guy who mooches on him every Sunday night for roast dinner at Ollie's house. Wonderful combination, and we have the lead and we've got the crowd behind us. Fantastic. Why can't we calm the game down and become a little bit more pragmatic for 10 to 15 minutes at least? Tyrone Mings signs a contract extension before this game, recovers from his injury or illness or whatever it was, and he just does not direct his header into a good area. Now, in fairness, this ball does come at Tyrone Mings pretty quickly. I don't think Emi Martinez has time to shout him off to collect the ball because it's coming straight for him. But we still do leave some soft spots at the edge of our penalty area rather often, don't we? And if you watch Saka, a player you might want to keep an eye on in these types of situations, Boubacar Kamara just reacts a split second too late. And so it's unfortunate all around that it even got to this point, but Mings knows it. It's a poor header. What will be interesting now with Diego Carlos back in training, maybe 2 weeks away, you have to think? Either Ezri Konsa or Tyrone Mings are going to step aside, or they're going to go with 3 at the back and move the fullbacks higher. Some very interesting games and decisions are coming up. Big moment, the 2-1 goal. It's one of the best goals we've scored in a very long time. And as much as Boubacar Kamara is getting examined on the defensive side of his game, every once in a while he shows some attacking intuition that is absolutely spectacular. He makes this goal. Actually, a good bowl out by Emi Martinez through an Arsenal press that was way too high and way too wide, leaving so much space for Kamara to just maraud forward. But then the pass inside the fullback, perfect weight, just enough for Moreno to come around the corner and get onto. You know Moreno wants to hook it back. This pass sets up the goal. Fantastic dummy. And then Phil Coutinho shapes like he's going to shoot to the far post only before hooking it back, leaving Ramsdale completely bamboozled. Inject it in my veins. Big moment. The 2-2 goal. And what was so irritating about this was it was exactly the same as the Stevenage 2-1 winning goal. You'd think we'd learn from our mistakes. The thing that irritates fans, coaches, and so many people is when you have blunders defensively and when you concede again off a set piece, a short corner routine, and you don't learn from it. Watch how slow Villa reacts again. And I talked about soft spots at the edge of the penalty area. Here's another set piece routine that you'd think we'd be switched on for, and we're not. There is so much room for Zinchenko to tee this up. I mean, take nothing away from the strike, but I would expect Emi Martinez to have that covered at his near post, and I would expect more players closing down, or at least switching on to the fact that it's another short corner routine. I mean, we are 1 month removed from the meltdown against Stevenage. Now, this should have been a major issue for me, and it wasn't even mentioned on my broadcast. On the 3-2 goal, 2 Arsenal players are in an offside position and standing what looks to me like in the direct line of sight of the goalkeeper. Not one Aston Villa player complained or appealed. In fact, they all collapsed to the ground after this ball went into the back of the net. I think they were just so stunned at the goal and the manner of the goal, but it does make you wonder if VAR looked at it and said, well, Martinez committed to the dive, so he couldn't have been unsighted. If he had just stood there and watched it go in, well, first of all, it wouldn't have gone in, but maybe it would have been called offside. And many of you astutely recalled when Villa went to Arsenal in 2021 and John McGinn scored what looked like a perfectly good goal. And no, apparently there was somebody in the line of sight. It didn't really look like it at the time, but this is the problem. Where's the level of consistency? We need some dependability that the laws are going to be interpreted from one game to the next the same way, and that's not what happened. Michael Owen and Shay Given were the pundits on my feed. They both said, this is offside. How could it not be offside? 2 players in the goalkeeper's line of sight. Big issue or moment number 3. Poor possession. Unai Emery was not happy after this match. That's the first time I've seen that level of frustration in him, and we see now how demanding he is, because he said we did not control the game, which we have to do at home now, and more damning, frankly, saying that the players did not stick with the game plan they had set out for Arsenal, a team that played 72 hours before in an emotional loss at home to Manchester City. Villa had no games in midweek. Did you notice how many times we turned the ball over in tight areas? Credit to Arsenal. Even 72 hours later, they pressed us all over the park and won the ball back a lot. I mean, the possession was 2-1 in their favor. So they had a lot of the ball as well. Our passing percentage, not great, as you saw. But the problem is game management. We had the lead twice. Sometimes you just have to keep the ball ticking over, treasure it, make a simple pass, force Arsenal side to side, chasing side to side, then playing through them, but keeping possession of the football and just killing the game a little bit. We didn't do that. We could not handle their press. Sometimes we relied too much on the long ball to Ollie Watkins, which is not how the manager wants to play. Here's a great example. It's 2-2. We're now in stoppage time. And this is the moment where Arsenal win possession back, after which they did not turn over the ball until Jorginho's ball strikes the crossbar and then Big Emmy's head into the goal. But this is a ball that is kind of played to nobody, and I'm sure that in the video analysis this coming week at Bodymore Heath, a lot of time will be spent on moments where the ball was turned over in possession, and the question will be asked, why didn't you use this option, or why weren't there more options? Because a lot of times it didn't seem like there were a lot of options, and we also do have to give some credit to the Arsenal press. They pressed all over the park, and especially in the second half when they went from second to fourth gear. This is a title contending team, and there's a reason for it. But still, we were sloppy with the ball, and the example I just gave you was a waste. They could have controlled this situation better. Big issue number 2. Emmy and Emery. Something's up between these two, I'm convinced. I mean, right out of the gates, Emi Martinez is stripped of his captaincy for John McGinn in this game, in a week that he came out with those comments about wanting to play Champions League football at some point, and maybe that might not happen with Aston Villa. Then Emery comes out after the game and makes it absolutely abundantly clear that he does not want his goalkeeper going forward on a corner at 3-2 down, and not helping Emi Martinez were his passing statistics in this game. 46% from 41 passes, and his accurate long balls were 35% from 34 attempts. Unai Emery wants a footballing goalkeeper. And I'm starting to become more convinced than ever that Emi Martinez is gone this summer. In fact, I'd bet a lot on it. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already had suitors come forward, and maybe they even have the framework of a deal. Something just isn't right. And it was weird with all these Arsenal connections, Emery and Martinez has been winding up Arsenal fans, and he was doing that throughout the game with his time-wasting tactics. And then the ball goes off of his head and in. It's an Emi Martinez own goal that turns out to be the winner. This game was dripping with irony everywhere. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Villa 2, Arsenal 4, Ramsdale's reaction. This is a monstrous moment in the match. It's the agony and the ecstasy of football, depending on which side of the moment you're on. And it's one of those instances that gives us this classic football cliche. It's a game of inches. It's a game of fine lines and fine margins. At one moment, at one end, you have Aaron Ramsdale's fingertips, millimeters of his gloves, tipping the ball off the crossbar and out. Moments later at the other, a ball hits the underside of the bar, then Emi Martinez's head, and it's the game-winning goal. If Aaron Ramsdale didn't get his fingertips to Leon Bailey's strike there, I don't think Arsenal recover. I mean, they're coming off a couple of bad defeats, a really emotional one in midweek at home, so mentally a little fragile, and just 72 hours after playing that game. So they've been stressed. Aston Villa had the whole week off. credit to Aaron Ramsdale, because we may look back on that save sometime in May and go, geez, you lose that game there. I mean, you're losing that game, not gaining 3 points. Mentally, that is such a big mountain to overcome. Down 1-0, down 2-1 at halftime, to come all the way back and get back in the title chase right away. It's a pretty incredible moment. And the weird thing is, you could almost feel something was still going to happen in the stoppage time of that game. One of Samir's soldiers, Miff, sent me this pitch side video. So the stuff that was being recorded by the Huts higher up in the Doug Ellis was being caught by Miff down at field level, which is kind of cool as we update you on the categories we've been following. And by the way, Trace McGrady pointed out that I obviously got some accounting or maths wrong in these statistics, so I've corrected the mistakes. Thanks, Trace. Record at Villa Park drops. VAR decisions, I think we lost one today because of the 2 players in the line of sight of Emi Martinez. Another goal for Watkins, though. Another goal conceded from a set piece versus the top 6. Now 4 out of a possible 24 points. That's not the best. We want to see Aston Villa start to beat those teams at the top of the table. And now, a tricky and oftentimes testy visit to Goodison Park, where Sean Dyche has yet to lose or concede since taking over. They've won both their games. They lost in the Merseyside derby, but a Sean Dyche team, it's not going to be a soft touch, even though Aston Villa has actually had a pretty good record at Goodison Park in recent history. Last year, Emi Buendia, deadly accurate with the flick from a Luca Dean cross late in the first half. The only thing more accurate was the coins that were thrown by the Scousers at the Villa players after the goal. Actually, it's odd that Scousers would throw coins, don't you think? Well, unless, of course, they were stolen. But I really think that this is a game Aston Villa has to look at and say, we need to bounce back. And we've been good on the road. The last thing you need right now is 4 losses on the spin. So what we thought was going to be relatively a straightforward game on the fixture list maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago when Everton was in complete disarray, well, that's totally changed now. So the big question is, what changes from this past Saturday would you make for Everton? Or for that matter, what would you keep the same? Phil Coutinho's Liverpool connections kind of makes him a bit of an X factor for me. And frankly, you don't lose class. You could see it at times in this game as well. It was a great goal. And I look at Willian at Fulham and what he's doing right now, and I'm thinking, don't want to give up on this guy just yet. Stick with Phil Coutinho. I don't think, though, that he and Buendia can play in the same team in what could be a blood and guts Sean Dyche type affair. So that's one area I'd look at. It'd be hard to take John McGinn out, too, based on his contributions last Saturday. And although I believe he has to do more without the ball, he has to chase and position himself a little bit more quickly. John Duran, for me, I think would cause more problems for Tarkowski and Cody than would Leon Bailey. So a couple of decisions I think might have to be made, but I think we need a more robust squad at Goodison. Well, the general of Samir's army, Samir Gaby, sent me this. I'm calling this Samir's Souvenirs. It's the Villa kit shop, and everything is on clearance right now online. It's unbelievable, including the really nice blue training kit. The jersey I'm wearing during the show, down to 19 quid. If you go to their clearance, every single thing is on clearance. This makes me absolutely drool with jealousy right here. And if you use the link in the description below when you go and fill your boots on all these clearance items with a reputable sponsor like Kazoo on the front of the kit, why, you'll be supporting this show. And thanks as always, Samir. You are an absolute prince and legend for supplying me with all this great stuff. Despite the fact that we've played both Manchester City and Arsenal in these last 3 games, 2 title-contending teams, the results from some of the other games on Saturday, especially down near the bottom of the table, I could sense might give people some discomfort. And when you look at Fulham and Brentford and how they're doing right now, given that they haven't spent as much money as Aston Villa over the last couple of years, you could start questioning about the value for dollar of the transfer investments, and you know that this is not Unai Emery's team. That is starting to become apparent. He is going to spend, and I think he's going to be backed. We keep hearing he's going to be backed, but I'm tired of saying we have a statement transfer window looming. It's time to stop talking about it. It's time to start investing. And if Emi Martinez goes and you pull in 75 more million to add to the kitty, hopefully the standard of player we chase goes up, because that's how we're going to improve the squad. Until Everton, stay well and stay positive. And as always, up the mighty Villa.